Well, you are finally here. The last chapter of the book, chapter 24 on me verbs. And if you were in class, if we were looking at each other, I might ask you to turn to the end of the chapter to see the vocabulary list. And you would see there is no vocabulary list. And you would let out a little sound of joy, a little happiness emitting from your mouth and your vocal cords, because you would realize, wow, we really have reached the end of the chapter. But we do have to talk about me verbs, right? Me verbs are verbs whose lexical forms end in me. Selfish little guys, right? Demanding our attention. Me, at the end of the semester here. The verbs you've learned so far, most of them end in omega, like luo, or some of them end in omai, like decomai or paruomai, right? And you've even learned a few other strange ones, like you've learned oida, where you're memorizing the perfect form, or the impersonal verb day. But the verbs that end in me, that is an older conjugation in the history of the Greek language, and it's preserved in some common verbs, right? So we have to learn some of those, the most common ones. You've learned the most common one so far is a me. But we have to learn especially three, right? Didomi, tithemi, and histemi. These are the three most common me verbs besides a me. And there are often compound forms of them, like apadidomi or paradidomi, and so are, anistemi. So, but these verbs, what do they mean? Didomi means I give, right? You're memorizing, just like with omega verbs, you're memorizing that first person singular lexical form. Didomi means I am giving. Tithemi means I am putting or placing. And histemi means I am standing, like to stand up. I'm standing. Okay, so, and these verbs, it's interesting, you're memorizing them with a iota reduplication on there. That's kind of, originally this was a systemi, and then this sigma dropped off and it was replaced with a rough breathing mark. Notice this is not thithemi, right, but it reduplicates with its non-aspirated cousin tau, so tithemi, histemi, didomi. There was something added to an older stem to make the present tense long ago with a iota reduplication, but you're memorizing it on there. What's important to realize is that the real root of the verb, the real stem of the verb that we're often going to find in other tenses is found here, though. So at its base level, that means when you're reading along and you hit a da or a do and you don't know what it's from, it's probably from didomi, because that's the real root of the verb right there. Or you hit a the or a the, it's probably from tithemi. Or you hit a sta or a stay, it's probably from histemi. You really need to learn that. Okay, that's something you need to have in your Greek toolbox there. Say, when I hit da or do, it's from didomi. It means I'm giving. I hit some form that has a the or the I don't recognize, it's from tithemi. Some form with a sta or stay, that's from histemi. So let's focus in for just a moment, and let's think about this verb didomi and how it appears in the different tenses. So you can see here, this is a chart from your book where it lays out the present tense, the imperfect, the future, the aorist, and the perfect. And this is really, this is good news. There's no new tenses, and the meaning of the tenses is the same, right? Present, progressive, imperfect, past, progressive, future, holistic view in the future, aorist, holistic view in the past, perfect, completed with a ongoing state that's resulted. All that's the same. Okay, and we also have first singular, second singular, third singular, first plural, second plural, third plural, right? All the verbal terminology is the same. Also, let's reassure ourselves. What else is the same? Look here in the future. So, say, samen, seta, susan, bam! Those endings are 100% the same as luso. Okay, you say, well, let's look in the perfect. We have reduplication with an epsilon. And then we have the endings ka, skin, kamen, kata, kan. Bam! 100%, right? 100% the same, 100% the same in the endings there. Now, I did warn you with didomy that, look, all that we have left is a stem is do, 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 do. We don't have the whole ditto. That iota reduplication is something that was added on to an older stem to make the present long ago in Greek, right? So I've warned you about that. Okay, so let's think about the aorist now. We look at the aorist, and we say, well, the aorist, it has an augment all the way through, just like the omega verbs. It has the alpha endings that I've learned all the way through. What's a little bit weird to me is that it has a kappa. You're like, that's strange. Well, here's the truth. Many me verbs will use a kappa rather than a sigma for their aorist. You're like, well, how am I going to know it's aorist? Because with the perfect, you have the full reduplication, but the aorist just has the augment. But if you look at the endings, like this is kind of creative accounting here, but you look, augments, alpha endings, all the alpha endings are the same. The only thing that's different is the kappa. You're like, you cannot put 100% there if it's a kappa. Okay, all right, let's do this. 99%, okay. Oh, that's too high. All right, let's see, we'll subtract 1% for each kappa, so we're 94% the same, okay? That's a little bit creative in our accounting. I should work for the Congressional Budget Office. Okay, now for the imperfect, we see an augment. We're using the same stem that we had in the present with the iota reduplication. And we do have, think about your endings. On, s, amen, eta, on. They're similar. They're similar endings, not quite the same. The imperfect rarely occurs with didomy, so I wouldn't worry about it so much. And then these initial forms, these are the ones that are most different, okay? They're the ones that are really the most different. The me verb ending, you memorize, os, osen, amen, ata, asen. They're similar, but they're a little bit different too. So it might not be a bad idea. You'll also notice, I just came to my mind, in the singular, you often have the long vowel on the stem, and then in the plural, you'll have the short vowel. It's just a regular pattern with me verbs. Might not be a bad idea to memorize that. So you can write out didomy, didos, didosin, didamen, didata, didasin. It might not be a bad idea to write that out. However, Dr. Merkel, my co-author in this book, put together this really handy chart, which I think is fantastic. You're looking at didomy, tithemi, histemi, your main me verbs, your most common me verbs outside of a me in the New Testament. And he points out, a lot of times in grammars, they require people to memorize the present tense forms, but look at how rarely they occur. In histemi only occurs one time in the whole New Testament in the present. And if you look at the frequency, it really is the aorist where these frequently occur. So shouldn't we rather require students to recognize and maybe memorize the aorist, since that's really the one that occurs? Look at this, right? The aorist forms of didomy occur basically 5 times as much as the present almost, right? So isn't it better probably to have you memorize the aorist? I'm going to let your professor, whoever's, teaching your class, if it's me, I'll decide, but decide what you memorize. But when I look at this chart, I have to ask myself if I've been wise in the way I've had students memorize things in the past. I'm not sure that was the most strategic. Now, this also is a chart drawn from your book, and you can see here we have this is called the principal parts. You always the same 6 forms always: the present active, the future active, the aorist active, the perfect middle passive, and the aorist passive. And supposedly, if you can recognize these 6 principal parts, you should be able to recognize most other forms of the verb. So one good idea might be to blow this little chart up, cut out these pieces, mix them up, and say, can I recognize these as coming, for example, if we look at the verb histemi, can I recognize steso as a future of histemi? And you say, well, Dr. Plummer told me any form of stay or sta, and then I have a sigma on the end. Yeah, that's a future. Could you recognize estesa as being aorist? We say, well, there's an augment, there's a stay, a sigma. I'm glad this me verb uses a sigma for the aorist. I like that. Yes, a few do. So there you go. Here, the perfect has hesteka. You have a kappa, alpha. You have that rough breathing mark on the beginning, hesteka. Hestamai, you have the mai, psi-tai endings. Estathen, right, your theta for your aorist passive. So it wouldn't be a bad idea, again, just to work through these and, look at what I recommended, da, do, the, sta, stay, and then poke around a little bit and see what endings, see where you have your kappa, your reduplication, see where you have your theta, like your big easy chair where somebody's feeling passive. Could you recognize, notice I'm saying recognize, not reproduce, not write out. Could you recognize these forms if you ran into them? And that's really what we're aiming at for the most part with me verbs.